Thank you, Lauren. It is always inspiring to know that companies like TD Connectivity are dedicated to investing in the future generation. Hi, my name is Maisie, and I'm a Girl of 2024 Youth Advisor from Michigan, and I'm so excited to moderate today's STEM panel called A Woman's Field, STEM. This topic is important for me because in Michigan, I lead my Girl Up Club in a STEM presentation program where we visit elementary school classes and do science experiments with the students with the hopes of inspiring them to pursue science careers and take more science classes in the future. Did you know that in science, technology, engineering, and math fields, or STEM, women make up only 34% of the workforce? STEM is an incredibly important aspect of today's society. It gives passionate leaders an opportunity to design and create real, effective solutions and address the many different issues that they are passionate about and that plague our society. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Kelly Kina, the Senior Director of Research Experiences and Education at the Underwriters Laboratories Research Institutes. Dr. Kina has extensive experience in teaching and training students and young scientists in various STEM fields, from environmental science to medicine. Thank you to the Underwriters Laboratories Research Institutes for being the title sponsor of today's STEM panel. We will also hear from Stephanie C., head of the LA Office of Biocom California, a nonprofit promoting investment and creative thinking in the life science industry. Before this, Stephanie was the CEO and co-founder of Meditope Bioscience. She was recognized by the LA Business Journal as one of the most influential leaders and impactful executives in Los Angeles. Our third speaker today is Vivian Wen, the Senior Product Designer at Hasbro. Vivian earned her degree in design from the Art Center College of Design and has spent over 20 years as a product designer for toy companies. And last but not least, we will have Girl Up alum Ria Singh here with us today. Ria is now the Director of Data and Analytics at Demonti, a company that provides non-government organizations with technology and resources that can assist with frontline healthcare practices. Ria has a degree from UC Berkeley in cognitive science and human rights, and she personally developed a strategy and led a team to build out the data management infrastructure and public-facing data hub for the Colorado Behavioral Health Administration. Let's give a round of applause and a warm welcome to our amazing speakers. For all of you, can you each share? For all my panelists, could you each quickly share one moment that sparked your interest in the STEM field?
Happy to go first. I've always been interested in STEM and technology specifically, so I'm not going to answer your question. I apologize. I'm going to tell you about a moment that I was deterred from continuing in STEM, and that's when I failed my first math class in college. And I didn't want to do it anymore, but I decided to do it anyways, and I'm the director of data and analytics at a company, so keep going.
I guess I'll go next. Hi, it's so nice to see you all. So let's see, as far as moment, even though I'd say that my career trajectory actually went by the way of illustration more than toy design, which is obviously where I am now, I have very fond memories growing up and playing with toys and even just feeling like toys just not only sparked a lot of interest, but also a lot of curiosity, you know, like, and especially in the way they would work. I just remember, you know, picking up, I think one of my first toys was like a little toy robot. I was just like, how does this work? And it kind of got me into tinkering, and it also kind of made me realize, even though this kind of predated STEM curriculum as we know of today, it kind of also made me realize STEM is also just constantly pervasive throughout society. It's like it's always kind of at the tip of our minds, and obviously very, very vital. So, sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but that's basically kind of
where it started for me.
So quickly, I think it started for me in kindergarten. I picked up a book in the school library about doctors, and actually it was about nurses, and of course all the girls were nurses, and all the boys were doctors in this picture book. But that's really where it started. We can talk about that more a little later.
So in 5th grade, I hid the frog that I was supposed to dissect in the cabinet because I didn't know why I was supposed to be cutting it open. It was not relevant or meaningful to me at all. And then when I was a college student, I was studying international human geography and volunteered to teach a class with 2 to 6-year-olds exploring a river canyon near my home in Denver where I grew up. And we started flipping rocks, and we're seeing all these really cool critters under the rocks, right? And many other kids would scream, and I found myself leaning in, really leaning in, and then I realized that the macroinvertebrates tell us water quality. And then it was like a lightning strike. I was like, oh, I did it. So I wanted to get the frog out of the cabinet with that one. It was pretty, yeah, that was my mom.
Thank you all so much for that. Stephanie, as someone who has worked as both an entrepreneur and a medical professional, which is crazy, props to you for that, what is your advice to girls who are interested in this intersection between the business and the science world?
So I'm actually going to correct that. I was not a medical professional. So you heard I picked up that book and ended up going to law school instead of medical school. So a different kind of medical professional, more on the legal technical side than combining that with biochemistry. But I would say the lesson there is, because I spent my entire educational career, if you will, thinking I was going to be a doctor, and at the very last second I pivoted and ended up going to law school instead of med school. And then I went on to go to business school. And so the intersection of it's to me, entrepreneurship is the intersection of a lot of different disciplines. Knowing a little bit of science, knowing a little bit of business, knowing a little bit of the law, and really how do you puzzle those things together? That's the key piece. I think when it comes back to STEM, I still love reading about it. I still love understanding what new innovation is about. But I guess my message to you guys would all be, you don't need to be a scientist to have a really brilliant career in STEM. And find what you're passionate about, what piece of STEM and STEM fields you are passionate about, and really dig into those, because the world needs more of our perspective, of the girl's perspective, of the women's perspective, to really influence the types of, my field was all in drug discovery and drug design, so, solutions to really bad diseases. And what we find right now is it's always a white male perspective, right? All the standards are set for white males, so a lot of times the dosages are a little bit higher than for people like us who are a little bit lighter, a little less dense on the muscle mass side of things. So having our perspective to say, wait a second, that's not the way women eat their meals, or, approach healthcare, or the way they think about their health. So it's really important to have that business mind, sort of the social mind, and your voices and your unique perspective.
Thank you so much for that. I think especially from my experience, I think it's hard. A lot of times, like for different majors, people think, oh, you can only be a science major, you can only be a business person, you can only be a humanities person. But I loved how you touched on how there's different connections and intersections between different fields, and it's really just the polarity of it. So, Kelly, as a professional in environmental science and someone who knows about it, and what connections do you see between the fight for gender equality and the climate crisis, and how do you see being a girl fit into being sustainable, or being a girl and being a woman in the climate action movement?
This is the question, so thank you for this question. And I just want to reflect back that I am a social scientist in the STEM field, and we need all disciplines in STEM. So STEM is inclusive of every discipline that you could be a part of, including social justice. So Maisie, thank you, because the connection between climate resilience and gender equity is all stemming from power and privilege. They stem from the same places. And we know from a lot of studies, the UN has a resolution from 2017 that says that you all are disproportionately affected by climate events and the LGBTQIA+ community. So there's disproportionate effects of climate change on women and other groups. Okay. Mary Robinson in 2018, I have my notes up here because I want to make sure I accurately cite these people and what they said. And I quote, "Climate change is a man-made problem that must have a feminist solution." And so a huge exclamation point on everything that's been said so far this morning, because that has everything to do and intersects with climate resilience and how we're going to get through this. So what are the feminist solutions to this? Well, agency and advocacy. So agency, feeling like I know what to do, and advocacy, saying to the person sitting next to me, I'm going to help you do that too. And that's why I'm so excited to be in this room with you all. We know that women are agents for change in this space. The big solution that comes from feminist theory is called relationality. This also comes from traditional ways of knowing. This is know your neighbors, and know your community, and be connected, and leaning into our neighbors and our community. That sounds like a simple solution, and it actually is one of the harder things. I heard somebody say this one home and walked across the street to meet my neighbor that I had for 10 years, and I walked over to meet them. So know your neighbors. When we have those social communities, that network is a resilient network. The other thing, and this is where I spent my last 30 years, is in education. When we have education, we empower and advance body autonomy. That has a connection to climate resilience. Body autonomy and climate resilience are connected. They're not disconnected, they're one and the same thing, which we heard somebody speak about just a few minutes ago. Becoming leaders, we're at a leadership summit, that is climate resilience, especially for young women, especially for young women, especially for young people of any gender identity. Climate decision-making and behavior from a personal perspective, but this is not just all on you. This is a heavy burden to carry, and so the reason I love the theme for this rest and resist is because rest is part of being an advocate and having agency. And then green skills. So green skills and green business are going to redefine our economy. You all are in the process of redefining our economic structures, and that is a core component of climate resilience. And then, of course, critically analyzing information, which you're all doing, and I'm just in awe of you all the time. I'll just close with Project Drawdown said that these things that I just listed could lead to a carbon savings of 70 gigatons of carbon in the atmosphere in just 30 years. And so every one of these small things is gonna add up.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I thought that was really powerful, and I think the climate crisis is something that's so relevant, but we also need to acknowledge its intersection and connections with gender equality, and I really appreciate it. So as Girl Up leaders, I don't know about you guys, but I oftentimes feel like I'm wearing many different hats within my clubs, whether it's for planning events or for leading different activities. And Ria, as someone who's worked in many different roles, from project manager to the leader of the tech team, to like designing your own thing, and you've worked so many roles. What advice do you have for girls on balancing leadership with other responsibilities?
That is a very good question. I don't know if I have any advice, but I can share some things that have worked for me. I will start by saying that I think a lot of the skills that I use on a daily basis as a leader of a team of 15 people, data engineers, designers, product managers, analysts, I learned how to be a friend, a team member, a collaborator and a leader in these rooms, because I was a teen advisor 12 years ago, which feels like yesterday. But I learned those skills in places like this. And I learned what it means to wear multiple hats and how precious that is as a responsibility. It's an honor to wear multiple hats. It's an honor to be, someone's boss and to punch the numbers and do all these different kinds of things. But it is also a really big responsibility. And something that I've learned over the past few years, specific to the workplace and specific to, I think, any workplace, but the STEM field, is the importance of psychological safety in the workplace and how to establish that and how to maintain it. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term, there are a lot of definitions for psychological safety. I'll throw out the definition that we use on my team, which is it's okay to make mistakes so long as we make them loudly with each other. So I mentioned earlier today that I failed my first math class in college. And now I work in the data field. I work in a highly technical field, but I actually I don't consider myself to be a very technical person. I don't have an engineering background. So something that Stephanie said earlier that really resonated with me is that we come from a lot of different backgrounds and we're all needed in STEM. Those backgrounds, those identities, they're incredibly valuable. As I mentioned, I work with designers, people who have experience in art, visual designers, very technical data engineers. Something that is often challenging when you're wearing multiple hats is getting people to have helping people talk to each other and work together when they come from different perspectives. So I think psychological safety is very important in the workplace, in any area of collaboration. And it's not just the responsibility of the boss or the leader. It means a lot to be a leader from behind, to be a team member. So I guess that's my advice. Keep that close to you throughout all the stuff that you do, psychological safety, taking care of the people around you as you're moving towards whatever you're building or working on.
Thank you so much for that. I think that was really powerful and connected with our theme of rest and resist today. And Vivian, so your job includes lots of creative and technical components as well. So do you have any advice for girls for boosting their own creativity and passion in their work, no matter their field or area of interest?
Oh, yes. Thank you. And I have to just say real quick, I am in awe of all of you, everyone in this room. So again, thank you for having me. Creativity and passion, yes, something that I very strongly believe in. I actually like to consider myself a champion of creative culture as well. Just to answer your question, just want to kind of preface it as well as saying that there tends to be kind of a common belief when it comes to the toy industry that it's very much like the movie Big, where like we all just kind of like our days are just filled and brimming with creativity and we're just brainstorming all day and product just kind of hits the shelf. And it's not always like that, and I say that meaning that there can be a lot of bureaucracy and red tape and just a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and in a good sense, on the theme of collaboration and all that, I mean, making a product is it really does take a village. You're working with cross-functional partners all the time. You're having to really tend to all types of opinions, but we're all driving towards the same common goal. And a lot of it does revolve around STEM, everything from behavioral science to obviously the innovation aspects of technology. I work constantly with mechanical and electronic engineers, and then we're also working with a lot of our data researchers to gather statistics and forecasting. So clearly there's a lot involved when it comes to STEM. Sorry, I don't mean to digress too much from your question here, but when it comes to maintaining that creativity, yes, sometimes I have to admit creativity can get a little bit challenged or lost in the shuffle, but three things that I kind of like to keep in mind. So number one, there needs to be a balance. So when you think about creativity, also keep in mind that there is kind of a difference between creativity and design. design is really about problem solving, and sometimes you have to not necessarily compartmentalize, but be able to kind of really balance the two and know that sometimes there's a time and a place for design. And then once you've landed on the design solution, then you can kind of go in and start to kind of finesse all the creative details. And then when you can kind of get to a point of acknowledging that, it can definitely, whenever you might feel like your creativity is a little bit dampened, if you just know there's a time and a place for it, that certainly helps. And then another part of it too is also, even though creativity is a big part of our jobs, don't exhaust your creativity only in the workplace. Get out there, be a sponge, get out there, talk to people, understand what your consumer needs, understand what opportunities and white spaces are out there to help make a difference. And then that kind of leads to creativity taking a lot of different forms. I know inclusivity has been a big theme here, and creativity. I think I talk to some people in different disciplines, and sometimes I might talk to a mechanical engineer. They might be like, I really don't have a creative bone in my body. And I like to tell them, yes, you do. Everyone can be creative. You can always find creativity and innovation no matter what you do. You can be creative about the way you mine data. You can be innovative about the way that you come up with processes and strategize. You can be creative in the way that you also form a story and pitch your product. So anyway, again, creativity takes lots of different forms. And then lastly, you mentioned passion. When it comes to really maintaining that passion, I like to say always keep people, your consumer, as your North Star. Because when you know that at the end of the day, your end product is really serving your consumer, that always reminds you of why you're doing this in the first place. So I can really go on and on about creativity and passion, so always feel free to please pull me aside, and I'm always happy to talk. But those are just my two cents.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And then we have a final question for everyone. In science environments and other male-dominated fields, it can often feel isolating as girls. We might feel that we're alone in our work and that we have to work twice as hard as men to be recognized for the things that we did or what we've accomplished. So as the amazing, accomplished women science leaders that you are, what is your experience with gender discrimination in your field, and what advice do you have when dealing with the pressures that come with being a girl, both in and out of the workplace?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. It continues even at my age. Yeah, so it's, you have to understand that it still is a male-dominated world, and that's why we need all of you guys in this room to push your way through there. And you have to find a way to be heard, because I've always found that that's been the problem, right? People have their sort of gender lens on. The male-dominated room has their gender lens on. They gravitate towards the people they look like. They look for the patterns that are comfortable and familiar to them, and that's not us. So finding your way to just sort of make it more comfortable for them to try and listen to you, finding several different strategies or tactics to be heard in that room, finding that ally in your workplace, in your room, who ideally maybe even is a guy, who can say, no, Steph said that first, and really sort of help you prop yourself up. Because when it comes directly from you, then you just start feeding into that feedback loop that a lot of guys will then just be like, okay, Gary said it, yeah. So finding your strategy, which is not always what I think we are sometimes taught today. It is not always to do it head on. There's a time and a place, and we just have to be a little bit smarter, and we know we are, so.
Yes. I think working in education and science education, I've been in predominantly female-led environments, but strangely female-led environments that are very structured around male-dominated culture. And so this was such a cool question for me to reflect on that. And then when I did arrive in a male-dominated culture, it looked familiar to me somehow. So I think the rest part is the biggest part of strategies for moving through male-dominated spaces. And again, the rest and resist is really critical. Well-being for us as individuals is really critical. And then what I've found is that when women get kind of submerged in male-dominated culture, we tend to tear each other down because that's how that works. And so the biggest thing to do is lift each other up and find your people to lift up and that lift you up. It is a huge, huge strategy for how we are going to disrupt and change the culture.
I'll keep this very quick because I completely wholeheartedly agree with everything that Stephanie and Kelly said. Honestly, just know your self-worth. Always remind yourself of that. Also, don't be too hard on yourself. Change doesn't happen overnight. But obviously stay persistent. And then also, and this is just to kind of echo what you both said, just know that there's power in numbers. What we're doing today is exactly that. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
I'm going to also not answer the question again because it's my name today. Because this was such great advice and I think we're all set with how to navigate these spaces. I want to share something that's really important once you have navigated these spaces and maybe become your own boss or are in a position to create your own culture. Remember that that's a very important responsibility, and it's also a space for creativity. And to Kelly's point, these are cultures that are, even in the absence of men, are sort of the legacy of that culture that men have built. It exists. So be ready to change that culture. Be ready to redefine it for yourself.
Yeah, you can go for it.
So listening to you guys, I'm just so moved. I appreciate everything that you guys have to say. But right now I'm a biochemistry major. I'm studying at Accidental College, and on my college campus as well as just growing up in America, I feel very empowered to speak up whenever I have any concerns that come up. And so at my school, I became a professional in bullying to a female 24/7, and I've had so much change on campus that. But right now I'm interning with the health organization in Los Angeles, and sometimes I see academic concerns that come up, and I'm really interested in being in a position as well, and I've done academic research, especially when it comes to epidemiology. But I'm wondering, in the bureaucratic, what I call real world, having to navigate being an intern and being a student, and being seen as a student, when you have learned so much throughout the years, and where people might be intimidated by what you have to say or shut you down, and you might lose all the opportunities that you got. Especially as a first-time student, I don't know how to navigate that. I really wanted advice on that.
That's a big question. It's really hard. I think you touched on something, right? People are scared. They're scared of you. They're scared of your generation. They're scared of women. They're scared of minorities, right? So they don't want to hear it. And you're an intern. So it's easy for them to not hear it and dismiss you. My thing has always been find a mentor. Find somebody, in that space and have a dialogue, right? Create that culture, start chipping away at that culture and say, hey, and try to make it, what I try to do anyway is try to make it as non-threatening, right? This is my perspective. And help them see and frame sort of kind of what your vision for what this organization could be and how wonderful it could be frame it that way. And then ask them, turn it back on them. How do I take all this wonderful stuff that I'm learning that I think could transform the culture here, transform this place? How do you start chipping away at it? Yeah, change takes time, and it starts with just getting that seat at the table or getting your foot in the door and keeping it there. And to your point, the fear makes it really easy for them to say, okay, yeah, you can stay outside the door until we call you back in. But you want to make sure that you keep your foot in the door somehow.
Can I just quickly add that the mentor doesn't have to be in your organization. Find a mentor who has, you feel like your identity and their identity are reflected in one another, because that they will help you navigate those spaces, and you can bring these instances, these very specific leverage points, to a mentor who may or may not have navigated these spaces before, but again, power in relationality, power in community, and having somebody to talk through. I just did a study on this, like how walking through it together is a really interesting way to open up where you can see opportunities, and it's less isolating in this one. So thanks for seeing this.
I might just add too, right here I am, CEO of a company, my second or third go around as CEO now, and I'm still looking for mentors, right? And it doesn't mean, because you're the only one that is experiencing it and knows exactly sort of your perspective of what's going on. So it's really, don't feel like you also have to take all the advice, because it might not resonate with you, but it's just helpful to have somebody to throw ideas and say, yeah, okay, yeah. Or, okay, thank you, that was super helpful.
Great question.
Wow, I really feel inspired from today's panel. I don't know about you guys. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. I feel so inspired and I'm in awe of you guys. Thank you for coming today and sharing your stories about your experience as women leaders in the science world and elsewhere. So as Girl Leaders, I'd like to remind you that we should see this female underrepresentation in STEM fields and sort of the male focus on many different work environments. We should see this not as a barrier for us to overcome, but more of a place that we can grow and really showcase what we can do. Let's give it up another time for these amazing